Welcome to the lecture on the ultimate theory of psychological types. Theory plus lots of fun examples. It's based on my paper, Unified Theory of Psychological Types, which you can find on the Psy archive following this link. So the claim is that every person has an inherent, unchangeable psychological type. And this psychological type has to do with how you experience your life, how you manifest, and ultimately who you are. And that is why knowing a psychological type can help you be authentic, be yourself, not trying to be someone else. Despite Carl Gustav Jung's breakthrough about a century ago, there is still a lot of confusion and debate on the theory of psychological types. The MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, is sort of one application of Jung's theory, but didn't quite get it right. Almost there, but not quite. And then there are lots of other alternative theories, Big Five, DISC, what have you. There's no consensus. Well, the theory that we're going to present here is the right one. It's based on mathematics, which is very crucial, and it unifies the ancient theory of temperaments with Jung's theory, or rather an upgrade of Jung's theory. And interestingly, gender takes central stage in this theory, and it also includes the Jungian notion of anima and animus. So it's very complete and really allows one to have a full understanding of one's personality. And as we'll see, there will be 16 different types, 8 male and 8 female, which makes it sort of much easier to classify, because if you're male, then there's only 8 possibilities, etc. Here's a little preview of what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to start with the 4 temperaments, which is an ancient Greek theory, and then we're going to develop the notion of the 8 archetypes, which you get when you take the 4 temperaments and then double it, one for male, one for female. Then we're going to define what the 8 elements are, which is an upgrade of Jung's cognitive function, and we're going to relate them to the 8 archetypes. Then we're going to give some illustrations through celebrity examples of elements and archetypes. Then we're going to look at the archetype spectrum, which is we're going to model the psyche and show how these archetypes fit into the psyche. And we'll find out that you can actually, in an individual psyche, you can fit 4 different archetypes. Which leads to a lot of complexity of personality. And finally, we're going to give some illustrations of the archetype spectrum, again through celebrity examples, and looking at sort of the interplay between archetypes within an individual psyche. Let's start with the 4 temperaments and the 8 archetypes. The most ancient personality theory is that of the 4 temperaments, and it's actually pretty good. It divides people into 4 different categories: melancholic, phlegmatic, sanguine, and choleric. And the way I found to describe it is, first of all, I stole these little faces from the internet. Someone really did this really well. I don't know whom to credit. But you can describe each of the 4 temperaments with either a frown or a smile, and either the eyebrows going upwards or downwards, and that gives you 4 combinations. And I like to put them on a kind of hill and valley. So, for instance, let's take the melancholic here. So the melancholic is just sitting at the top of the hill. Just chilling there, not doing much. Then, on the other hand, you have the guy, the sanguine guy, at the bottom of the hill, who is sort of oscillating back and forth and having a good time, basically vibrating, enjoying life, living life to the fullest, not really caring if they're the top of a hill or whatever. Then you have the phlegmatic guy, who's taking the advantage of his potential and just rolling down the hill and taking advantage of his sort of vast viewpoint, yet also kind of going towards sort of the life at the bottom of the hill. And then we have the choleric guy, who's running up the hill, or sort of basically taking off, flying towards the heavens, not really being happy just hanging out there at the bottom, but really having these very, very high goals of reaching the top of the hill. You can roll this hill and valley into a circle. So you have the melancholic at the top, then going downwards you have the phlegmatic, then at the bottom sanguine, and then going upwards is the choleric. And let me just remind you that here sanguine means like full-blooded. So sort of really there's a sense of enjoyment and sort of life. The phlegmatic means kind of like chill, laid back, maybe slightly lazy. Choleric has the idea of kind of being angry, but really dissatisfied, really kind of sort of urging to do more. And the melancholic, well, means literally sad. Maybe sad from the viewpoint of others, because the melancholic really enjoys time on his own. About the masculine and feminine principles. So these are principles that transcend biological sex. And I think sort of the simplest description is the masculine divides and the feminine joins together, magnetizes. You could also say that the masculine has a bit of a linear flavor, whereas the feminine is more circular. Masculine is more zooming into details, feminine is more sort of bigger picture, zooming out. So these and the masculine and feminine principles, they are going to appear at least in two places in this theory. One is that each of the four temperaments comes in a masculine and feminine flavor. So that makes 8 archetypes, we're going to call them, in total. So 4 feminine archetypes, 4 masculine archetypes, and we're going to talk more about them in a second. Also, what we're going to see a bit later on is that the psyche is divided into a masculine and feminine part. This is what Jung called anima and animus. So gender is very important, and basically insisting on some sort of gender neutrality would completely miss crucial structure. Having said that, there is a mix of both genders within the psyche. So on one hand, it's neutral, but you really need to decompose the psyche with mathematical precision in order to not lose information. So let's look at the 8 archetypes. So first, we have the masculine archetypes. So we have a masculine melancholic at the top. Then we have masculine phlegmatic, masculine sanguine, and masculine choleric. And here we have the feminine versions: feminine melancholic, feminine phlegmatic, feminine sanguine, and feminine choleric. Now, as we'll see later, no person is a single archetype. You have let's say 4 archetypes within your psyche, but we can try to take stereotypes. Someone who's like really is a good representative of the archetype, and so we can kind of assign existing humans to different archetypes. So and what's interesting is I found here sort of a groupation where like the band the Beatles, they have contains all 4 masculine archetypes, and we have the four friends from the series Sex and the City from the late 90s, they represent, or they together they form the four different feminine archetypes. So we'll be using this a lot. We'll be somehow using real people to represent archetypes. I think that's quite intuitive. So here we have George Harrison as the melancholic, Ringo as the phlegmatic, we have Paul McCartney as the sanguine, and John as the choleric. And on the feminine side, we have these different characters, Charlotte, Miranda, Samantha, and Carrie, as the melancholic, phlegmatic, sanguine, and choleric, respectively. And not only do they are the characters, not only the characters have these personalities, but also the actresses in real life have these personalities. So that was a pretty good match. Finally, we can try to give more descriptive names to these archetypes. So we're going to use for the masculine part, we're going to use the ancient Greek dichotomy between humans or heroes, the hero and the god. Hero being here on earth and the god being up in heaven. And by this I mean the Greek god, not the Christian god. So Greek gods. So the masculine melancholic is a god archetype, whereas the masculine sanguine is the hero archetype. And then we have these sort of two intermediate stages. You have the heavenly hero, which is the choleric. It's like a hero that's going upwards to reach the heavens. And then we have on the other side, we have the earthly god, which is the god descending onto earth. So we're using these sort of mythological names, if you will. They are usually quite powerful. And on the female side, feminine side, we're using a dichotomy between sort of a full-grown woman, which is what you have down here, the sanguine, feminine sanguine, and the feminine melancholic would be the princess or the little girl. And then again, we have these sort of two upward moving and downward moving, which is the heavenly woman and earthly princess, which are the choleric and phlegmatic, respectively. Sometimes it's best to get an idea of what the archetypes stand for if you consider their sort of negative traits, i.e. How others view them. So the melancholic, which would either god or princess, depending on whether it's male or female, archetype seems quite self-absorbed from the point of view of the others. Then the phlegmatic, which would be the earthly god and earthly princess, respectively, they may seem as someone who exploits others, lets others sort of sweat, or if they just enjoy the fruit. Now, then we have the sanguine archetype, which is the hero and woman, respectively. They may be viewed as domineering because this earth here is their kingdom, if you will. And then the cholerics, which are the heavenly hero and heavenly woman, they will be seen as provocative, and you could say, especially in relation to the melancholics, they're kind of provoking the melancholics, also provoking the sanguines. I mean, that they just kind of see both sides, and they're not. They want to sort of disrupt this kind of everyone being sort of happy and lulled into their own their own realm. Another useful way to understand the archetypes is in relation to the life cycle of a man or woman. And here I think you should go back a few centuries at least, when people lived much more kind of archetypally, stereotypically, if you will, and there was sort of a clear division between men and women. Then these archetypes were sort of still alive in their pure form. So if you look at the male life cycle, so well, in either case, you go through childhood, youth, maturity, and old age. So if you're a male, when you're a child, so a boy, is going to be more of a heavenly hero, going to have sort of wild dreams, want to be an astronaut, want to be a superhero, etc. Then as you sort of become a younger man, you need to sort of work hard, earn a living, and sort of learn to navigate this world. So you become a hero. That's a very sort of heroic thing to make this transition from childhood to adulthood. Then you have, when you sort of reach a mature age, you become more of an earthly god, where you're now sort of reaping the fruits of your experience, and maybe you're now sort of manage others, and you can sort of step back a bit and enjoy a bit more. And then in your old age, maybe you become more, again, in a sort of traditionally more focused on the heavens, in the sense of maybe you become religious, spiritual, or just kind of removing yourself from society altogether. On the feminine side, again, going back a few centuries, in the childhood you're sort of this innocent little girl, daddy's princess. Then as you sort of enter sort of your teenage period, you become a heavenly woman, sort of in between a girl and a woman, kind of your provoking men. You're testing out your attractiveness on men, etc. That's the heavenly woman archetype right there. Then you have your then once you reach sort of a maturity in terms of like your childbearing age, so then you become this full grown woman, and you're again you're sort of very very involved. It's a very active period of your life, sort of raising children. And then in your sort of later years, you become more of an earthly princess, which is now you again. So you step back a bit from the bustle of this household work, and rather you're kind of managing the household now. Maybe you have some, maybe your sons have brought their young wives into the household. Again, speaking very traditionally here. And now you're kind of more like kind of managing, and you're kind of pulling the strings from the background. We're going to look at the 8 psychological elements and their relationship to the archetypes that we just defined. The 8 psychological elements, as we're going to define them, are what the 8 archetypes are made out of. Much like a chemical compound like potassium chloride or salt is made out of potassium and chloride. So chemical compounds are made out of elements, and similarly here we're kind of pretending that the psychological elements are a bit like chemical elements, and we give them sort of symbols that look like they're chemical elements for a laugh. So now if you're familiar with Jung's theory of cognitive functions, there's a one-to-one correspondence between what we call the psychological elements and Jung's cognitive functions, but we're really trying to make them a lot more relatable, because an element really you can feel it. It has color, and it can be bred from people. You can sort of feel the element from their physiognomy, from the energy they're giving out, the sort of their body type almost. So here they are. The elements are spirit, libido, enchantment, matter, truth, action, love, and beauty. So these are, if you will, the building blocks of personality. So 4 of them are masculine and 4 of them are feminine. So starting with the masculine ones, we have the masculine ones themselves are divided into perceiving and judging. So the 2 perceiving ones are spirit and libido, and they are what Jung called introverted and extroverted intuition. Then we have enchantment and matter, which are feminine elements. This is what Jung would call introverted and extroverted sensation. Now we have the 4 judging elements. First, the masculine ones, truth and action, which is what Jung called introverted and extroverted thinking. You see, extroverted thinking and action doesn't really sound like the same thing. You know, what's extroverted thinking? You know, so this way of calling things is really is much more tangible. And then you have love and beauty, which is what Jung called introverted and extroverted feeling. Again, usually people, when they think extroverted feeling, they don't know that it's about sort of that has this aesthetic quality. So we're hoping to sort of breathe sort of new life into these Jungian cognitive functions by renaming them like this. And as in Jung's case, sort of they 4 of them are introverted, 4 of them are extroverted. The introverted ones we write in italics just to make sure. Now we're going to create the archetypes from the elements. So an archetype consists of 1 perceiving element and 1 judging element of the same gender. So if we take the 4 masculine elements, as in here, we can create the 4 archetypes by combining perceiving and judging. So here, the God archetype is a combination of spirit and truth. The hero archetype is action plus libido. You see, that already gives you that sanguine feeling, whereas spirit and truth is like you're already kind of up there in the heavens. Then the earthly god is truth and libido. So you're kind of using that higher knowledge, but you're kind of applying it to a kind of a life situation. Libido is, you can think of it as some kind of life energy, right? And the heavenly hero is very goal-oriented. So there's action, but it's sort of oriented upwards towards the spirits. Then we have on the feminine side, we have the princess archetype, which is enchantment and beauty. Then, on the other hand, we have the sanguine woman archetype, is love and matter. So, very motherly, right? And then we have combinations thereof. So we have beauty and matter is the earthly princess, very kind of stately. And you have enchantment and love, which is the heavenly woman. Now, in the next 2 slides, at the risk of boring you, I'm going to try to give a sort of a deeper insight into what we mean where these elements come from, and in particular in this slide, we're going to talk about introversion and extroversion. What does that really mean? Usually, you think of someone's extroverted, they get their energy from, they thrive in a sort of an interactive situation where they interact with their environment a lot. Whereas someone introverted needs time to recharge and be with him or herself. So, in very precisely, we're going to model psychological space. So, if you think of your existence, there is like a center of you, which we're going to call mind. And we're going to put it right here in the center. We call it 0. Then you have a kind of boundary, which we're going to call 1, which is sort of where you stop and the environment begins. And then there's sort of going from the environment out to sort of like cosmos. The cosmos, that's where infinity is. It's somehow this mysterious unknown, like infinitely far away. So that's how we're going to, this is how we feel life. You don't have to think of it literally, or you shouldn't think of it literally in any physical sense. So the true meaning of extroversion means that you like to hang out at this border, which is this circle of 1. Which is sort of the boundary between the interior, which is, centered at the mind, and the exterior, which is everything that's not you. So that's what extroversion means. Whereas introversion doesn't just mean that you hang out at 0. You also like infinity. Sort of, as you go into 0, go deep into your mind, you, so to speak, reach out to the cosmos, to infinity, meaning that somehow 0 and infinity are one and the same thing. So 0 infinity is like a combination, and just like 1 is an entity of its own, 0 infinity is another entity of its own. So that's sort of the hidden border between the interior and the exterior, happening at 0 infinity. You go to the end of the interior, which is 0, and you end up at the end of the exterior, or beginning, which is infinity. So a bit abstract, but that's the true meaning of introversion and extroversion. Now, please bear with me for one more slide, or just skip. This is now like a full sort of explanation of what these elements mean. So consider the psychological space we had before. Remember, it was like a circle of radius 1, and then it sort of extended to infinity. So now we're saying, well, that circle, that's a disk. It's on a plane, and we're adding a third dimension. And that third dimension is psychological time. So now we have psychological time, which is sort of vertical, and psychological space, which is that plane where that sort of circle lived. All right. So now here we are, our friends 0 infinity right here in the center, and then you have 1 on the border of the circle. So you can think of beauty here as being moving inwards from the exterior to the interior, meaning beauty attracts and it attracts in an extroverted sense. It attracts on that radius 1 boundary. Whereas love is doing the same thing, pulling inward, but at the introverted 0-1 boundary. So some kind of inner beauty, if you will. Then action like beauty, is extroverted, and it's like you're going out. You're sort of you're oriented outwards towards the environment. And similarly, truth, you're oriented inwards in order to get out to infinity. You're sort of seeking truth, so to speak. So these are the four judging elements. Two of them introverted, two of them extroverted, two of them are masculine, two of them are feminine. And they're happening on this psychological space plane. What about psychological time? Well, you should think of yourself as being, this plane being right here, sort of at kind of midday, if you will. Going upwards is dawn, and downwards is dusk. And psychological time has a lot to do with sort of kind of your energy level. So if you consider matter and enchantment, they are going downwards towards dusk. They're kind of soothing you, sort of, you're kind of, you're about to fall asleep almost. Either in an introverted way through enchantment or in an extroverted way through matter. Right? So if you want to put a child to sleep, you either sort of cuddle them in matter, or you tell them stories, or you show them a fire or something. So you put them to sleep through these two ways. So these are kind of downward moving, sort of a energy decreasing elements. And then you have uplifting elements, which are both masculine. The extroverted one is libido, and the introverted one is spirit. So in summary, we now have all 8 elements. You have on the introverted side, acting near zero infinity, we have spirit enchantment going up and down towards dawn or dusk respectively, and you have love and truth going inwards and outwards. And then on the extroverted side, in psychological time, we have libido upwards, matter downwards, and we have beauty and action going inward and outward respectively. Theory, now it's time to have some fun. We're going to illustrate elements and archetypes using celebrities as examples. So starting with the masculine judging elements, we have the introverted truth and the extroverted action. And just soak in the difference. Truth, you're kind of like thinking deeply. With action, you're going for it. You're going towards the goal right now. Boom. I should mention again, that I'm deliberately using men for masculine elements and women for feminine elements, just because it sort of, it brings a stronger message. But again, we will see, everybody has everything, so it's all cool. So now, looking at the feminine judging elements, we have the introverted love and the extroverted beauty. So again, love is deep emotion. And beauty is this sort of extroverted attractiveness, shininess. Now here we're contrasting the two masculine perceiving elements, which are both uplifting. We have the introverted spirit and the extroverted libido. So spirit is this crazy intuition, intensity. It has this sort of electric quality, like a thunderbolt. Whereas libido has to do with joy, fun, happiness. Now let's contrast the two feminine perceiving elements, the introverted enchantment and the extroverted matter. So they're both sort of soothing. Enchantment sees a lot about the eyes somehow. You can imagine sort of watching a fireplace. That's what enchantment is like. Well, matter is obviously about touch. And matter, consistency, density. Now we're going to go through the 8 archetypes one by one and give more examples of people that somehow represent that archetype. This somehow means that it's actually their primary archetype, and we'll see what that means later on. So again, remember, archetypes are not real people. So when I take a person to represent an archetype, it's an approximation, right? So to the point of stereotyping. So please bear that in mind, that we're kind of stereotyping people at this point in order to illustrate the concept of archetype. Here we are. We're looking at first the masculine melancholic, also known as the God archetype. And here we have some examples: Nikola Tesla, Jiddu Krishnamurti, George Harrison, Clint Eastwood, Ted Danson, Freddie Mercury, Peter Gabriel, Justin Bieber, Leonard Cohen. Some of these are introverted, some of them are extroverted. But they all have in them the God archetype, which consists of truth and spirit. So what can we say generally about the masculine melancholic? Well, first of all, there's something serious about them, something slightly missing, a light touch. It can be quite stern, but inside they're very gentle. There's also this sort of self-referential excellence. So they demand excellence of themselves, not necessarily to be better than someone else, but just, it's the right thing to do. They're can be quite rigid in their ways. They can be stick to principles and often attracted to a higher cause. And not that many of them are in the public eye, actually. They're often recluse, almost hermits. So again, this is a general idea of the masculine melancholic or God archetype. On the other extreme, we have the masculine sanguine or hero archetype, which consists of action and libido. So we have some examples here: Sylvester Stallone, John Bon Jovi, Mick Jagger, Donald Trump, Ed Sheeran, George Michael, Harrison Ford, Hugh Grant. So the sanguine, the masculine sanguine in this case, they just love life. Life is so full of full of experiences, full of potential experiences. Life isn't long enough to accomplish everything and taste everything. Everything is so yummy. They're super curious. They want to, as I say, experience everything. There's so much to do. And you try, you fail, you try again. Excellence isn't really sort of an issue. It's about doing a lot of things. Very fluid in their ways, and absolutely no regrets about anything. Now we have the masculine choleric or heavenly hero, which has the action like heroes, but in spirit like gods. So they are somehow a combination of the two, a very particular combination. here we have some examples: John Lennon, Ben Stiller, Simon Cowell, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, Serge Gainsbourg, Cristiano Ronaldo, Kanye West, and Novak Djokovic. So they're characterized by superhuman ambition. They have incredible energy, they're very tenacious, never give up, always up for mission impossible. And so unlike the heroes, the life is not so fun. And so it's not a very happy life, because they're always like chasing that heavenly goal. And also there's this burden of excellence. But unlike gods, it's a comparative excellence. You want to be better than everyone else around you. That's why the heavenly hero is going to be the king of rock, the king of pop, the greatest of all times. Visibility is very, very important. It's important to stand out. And here we have the opposite of the heavenly hero, which is the earthly god, or masculine phlegmatic, which has truth and libido as elements. Here we have some examples: Robert De Niro, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, Dustin Hoffman, Albert Einstein, Jay-Z, Vladimir Putin, Mahatma Gandhi, Lionel Messi, and Owen Wilson. So unlike heavenly heroes, which really want to be visible, the earthly god kind of likes to be invisible, yet present. Because also the gods are somehow invisible, but the earthly god is invisible as a form of strategy. So the earthly god is book smart and street smart. It's applied thinking, strategizing. Also, they often have a kind of a goofy side, perfectly capable of being clowns, but it seems that even that is kind of thought through and serves a purpose. They know how to preserve their energy and optimize their experience of life. So they're not high energy people like the heavenly heroes, quite the opposite. So they're always sort of holding back. They also don't seek perfection. This is the libido aspect, just like heroes. But they're on the lookout for opportunities, and they're very, very fluid, like water. And they know that by blending in, you can accomplish your interests more easily. So, as I said, they're secretive, they blend in, they don't stand out. And also timing is important, so that you can act at the right moment, especially when you don't have so much energy and you want to sort of accomplish something. You need to wait for the right moment to strike. Now let's move on to the 4 feminine archetypes. And again, let me remind you that archetypes are not real people, so they are going to come across as stereotyping, and that's perfectly all right in this context. So we're going to use, again, some real beings, people, as an example. As examples. So here we're talking about the feminine melancholic, or princess archetype, which consists of beauty and enchantment. So we have some representatives here: Brooke Shields, Mia Farrow, Jane Birkin, Mylène Farmer, Claudia Schiffer, Anna Kournikova, Audrey Hepburn, Catherine Deneuve. So let's also remember what the feminine principle means. It's about uniting. It's about magnetizing one way or another. So here we have the princess magnetizes through beauty and enchantment. So we're talking about a sort of childlike quality, innocence, purity. That's a good girl, sweet, perfect, angelic. We're talking about elegance and beauty, but kind of a light-hearted elegance. Aesthetics, fashion, princess is very pedantic. She's also a dreamer, romantic. She wants someone to promise her the moon and the stars. That's the princess archetype. On the other extreme from the princess, we have the woman archetype, which is feminine sanguine, which is very earthly. It comprises the love and matter elements. Here are some examples: Rosalia, Alanis Morissette, Elizabeth Taylor, Cher, Karol G, Sade, Tina Turner, Naomi Campbell. So the woman archetype is caring, warm, motherly, welcoming, generous, organic, natural. The feminine sanguine, the woman loves life, loves people, and everyone is their child. They tend to find motherhood very fulfilling. Also, they enjoy anything earthly, so food, sensuality. Also stability, family, growth. A woman will typically like a big family, a big collective, and being the center of that collective life. So here we have the feminine choleric, or heavenly woman, which comprises the elements of love, like woman, and enchantment, like the princess. So somewhere in between. Here we have some examples: Camila Cabello, Marilyn Monroe, Drew Barrymore, Brigitte Bardot, Madonna, Rihanna, Monica Bellucci, Kim Kardashian. So the heavenly woman is provocative, exciting, seductive. She's out to find crazy, timeless love. It's all about passion. She strives somewhat in a kind of dynamic and almost chaotic life situation. She likes to impress, fame, the whole world being at her knees. She wants to be cool, popular. She cannot stand the ordinary. So this is obviously an archetype that's not very easy to sustain for a whole lifetime. And finally, we have the feminine phlegmatic, or earthly princess, which is the opposite of the heavenly woman, which has elements beauty and matter. And here are some examples: Linda McCartney, Anni-Frid Lyngstad from ABBA, Kate Middleton, Melania Trump, Emma Watson, Suzanne Vega, Margaret Thatcher, Glenn Close. So the opposite to the heavenly woman, the earthly princess likes to be in the background, does not seek the spotlight. They may come across as aloof. An earthly princess holds herself in high esteem, has a tremendous amount of self-respect, self-care. She considers herself very valuable. She is very organized, likes to live a life of harmony, a life of comfort, and that's the earthly princess. The purpose is to connect the notion of the archetypes to like an actual psyche of a human being. So we're going to look at the structure of the psyche, and we've touched a bit upon this when we talked about psychological space, psychological time. So we're going to go deeper into the structure of the psyche and how it contains two genders and four archetypes, two masculine and two feminine. So let's just recall psychological space, which consisted of an interior, which is somehow what belongs to you, and the exterior, which belongs to the rest of the world. The interior and exterior versus the exterior is one way to subdivide the psyche. another duality present in the psyche is that between the personal and contrasexual part. So Carl Jung introduced the notion of anima in men and animus in women, which is respectively the feminine part of a male and the masculine part of a female. So that, together with the interior-exterior duality, divides the psyche into 4 parts, 4 quadrants, we could call them. So there are these different combinations. You can have interior personal, interior contrasexual, exterior personal, and exterior contrasexual. Now, these correspond to some notions that we're already familiar with. So the personal interior is what we would call the conscious. So it's your conscious self. The personal exterior is the unconscious. So somehow we're saying here that in this kind of abstract psychological space, the unconscious lives externally from you, on the outside. Then we also have the anima, which is really the conscious anima, which is contrasexual and also lives in the exterior, a bit like the unconscious. This is why the anima and the unconscious are, have a similar flavor. Now, it's important to note here that we're talking about a male. If we're talking about a female, then instead of anima, we write animus. That's the only difference. And we've just color-coded things here so that the personal of a male is masculine, so hence the color blue, and the personal of the female is feminine, hence the color red, and then the contrasexual is inverted here. So again, we've talked now about conscious, unconscious, and anima, which we said is actually, strictly speaking, the conscious anima. And then there's a 4th missing part, which is the unconscious anima, which is in the contrasexual interior. So actually, it's the part of the anima that's actually in the interior part of the psychological space. Maybe a bit abstract, but basically we have these 4 parts of the psyche. Voila. Now, what do we identify with? Well, we identify with the conscious. Right? So we identify with the personal interior. Now, you can, more generally, we tend to identify with the personal. So even the personal exterior could work. We could kind of identify at times with our unconscious quite easily. We could also identify sometimes with the unconscious anima because it's not the personal interior, but at least it's the interior. So, it's all very fluid, but you tend to identify with the personal and with the interior. On the other hand, you tend to project the contrasexual onto others, and you tend to project the exterior onto others. That's why in the most extreme case, the conscious anima is something that you would definitely project onto someone else of the opposite sex. But yes, you could also project the unconscious onto someone else because it's exterior, and you could also project the unconscious anima onto someone else because it's contrasexual. So while the conscious and the conscious anima are pretty strictly identification versus projection onto others, the other two are a bit shady territory. The structure of the psyche, we've also seen the different archetypes. Now let's see how the archetypes are distributed inside the psyche. So, as I keep saying, we are not archetypes, and here we are an example of a psyche, a psyche of a male in this case. And we have all 8 elements which are paired up into 4 archetypes. We call them primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary archetypes. So the primary archetype, let's say you're a male, then it's the masculine archetype that's in the personal half of the psyche. That is the primary archetype. So kind of doubly male, because the personal is male. So male in male. The quaternary is sort of the opposite. It's the feminine archetype in the contrasexual part. So here it's quaternary. See, it's a feminine archetype, the heavenly woman in this case, and it's in the contrasexual, i.e. feminine part of the psyche of this male. And the other 2 archetypes are kind of mixed or neutralized. So the secondary archetype is the feminine archetype in the personal part of the psyche for a male, right? So it's beauty and matter. So it would be normally an earthly princess, but it's in a male. It's in the personal part of the male. And the opposite, we have a masculine archetype in a sort of a contrasexual part of the psyche, which is feminine. Here we have another example. It's a female, and so with the exact same elements, you see, but now the primary archetype is the feminine one. So the primary archetype is the feminine one in the personal space. So this, we're talking about an earthly princess here. Then this god archetype is a secondary one. A tertiary one, we see this heavenly woman in the masculine space. And finally we have a hero in a masculine space. That's the quaternary archetype, which is sort of fully male, fully masculine, sorry. All right, so we've just said all 8 elements are in there in the psyche. They are paired up into 4 archetypes. Another thing to note, or to know, is that each quadrant is either fully introverted or fully extroverted. So in this particular example, you see the personal interior is introverted, whereas the personal exterior is extroverted. The contrasexual interior is extroverted, and the contrasexual exterior is introverted. So that's why, in this particular case here, the primary archetype is a god. It's a masculine. It's a masculine melancholic, and the personal interior is introverted. So that makes it a male introverted melancholic. In the previous slide, we saw an example of a psychological type, so an actual male of type Mim. Well, how do we construct that? Are there any rules? Yes, there are. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to bore you with the rules, which are very mathematical. You can skip this part if you don't care. So here we have all the rules we need. It's a cheat sheet containing all the archetypes and the various transformations. So the archetypes, as we've seen before, we can summarize them in sort of little squares like this. So this is like the masculine square, where you see how the elements are related to the archetypes. So masculine melancholic is this row here, spirit and truth. Masculine phlegmatic, truth and libido. Masculine sanguine, action and libido. And masculine cleric, spirit and action. And down here we have the feminine archetypes and the relation to the feminine elements. So we have feminine melancholic, which is enchantment and beauty. We have feminine phlegmatic, which is beauty and matter. We have feminine sanguine, which is love and matter, and feminine choleric, which is enchantment and love. Now, what we're showing here is what happens to an element when you go, say, from the exterior to the exterior. So if you have spirit in the interior, it means that you have matter in the exterior, and vice versa. If you have matter in the interior, you have spirit in the exterior. So they come in pairs. So in a similar way, you have enchantment related to libido, truth related to beauty, and love related to action. On the other hand, when you're moving from the personal part to the contrasexual part, then spirit turns into libido, matter into enchantment, truth into action, beauty into love, and vice versa. So we start with this empty masculine psyche. We know it's masculine because we've colored the personal space in blue. So it's an empty psyche, and now we're going to show how to construct, for instance, the MIM archetype, male, introverted, melancholic. All right, so now we need to place the primary archetype. So because it's a male, introverted, melancholic, so it's a male, masculine, melancholic is going to be the primary archetype. So we have elements spirit and truth. Where we're going to put them? Well, you need to know that every quadrant is either fully introverted or fully extroverted. And so when we say that this is an introverted male, it means that his conscious is introverted. So the personal interior is introverted. So we put introverted elements in there. Now, remember, the introverted elements are the ones that are in italics. So both spirit and truth are introverted. So we're going to put them in the personal interior because this person is introverted. So here we are, and that's our primary archetype right there. Now that we've placed our primary archetype, the rest follows through these transformations. So now let's see if we now do this interior-exterior transformation. Under this transformation, spirit becomes matter and truth becomes beauty. So we place matter and beauty here, and that automatically gives us the secondary archetype, which is a neutralized earthly princess, or neutralized feminine phlegmatic. It's neutralized because it's as we said, the secondary archetype is always neutralized, which means that it's a feminine archetype, but in a kind of a masculine part of the psyche. And note also that the personal interior, the conscious, was introverted. Automatically, the unconscious is extroverted. And you can see this from the transformation, the interior-exterior transformation, which always takes introverted to extroverted and vice versa. Now that we've filled in the personal part of the psyche, we can use this personal contrasexual transformation to fill in the rest. So the beauty here turns into love. So we're staying in the exterior, but we're moving from personal to contrasexual. Matter turns into enchantment. Spirit turns into libido. Truth turns into action. And now here automatically we've created our tertiary and quaternary archetypes. Remember, the quaternary archetype is fully contrasexual. So you see we have a feminine environment, sort of a feminine part of the psyche, and we have a fully feminine archetype here. So that's the quaternary archetype, whereas the tertiary archetype is neutralized just like the secondary. Let's take another example. Fess. That's female, extroverted, sanguine. So we know it's female, so the personal space is feminine, and that's why we've colored it sort of reddish. Now we know the primary archetype is FS, so feminine, sanguine. Here we are. So we have love and matter. Now, matter is extroverted, love is introverted. So here we have a different situation than before. Since we're dealing with an extroverted person, the personal interior, that's where we put all the extroverted elements. So we're going to put matter in the personal interior, and we're going to put love in the personal exterior, which is introverted. Now we're going to build from here using our rules. So now we're going to see, we have the interior and exterior both half filled. Now we're going to use the interior-exterior rules to fill in sort of the other half. So under these rules, matter becomes spirit. Spirit is introverted, we put it in the exterior. And love, which is introverted, becomes the extroverted action. We're going to put it right here, and that gives us our secondary archetype, which is spirit plus action. That is the masculine choleric or heavenly hero. Now that we filled in the personal half, we now can use the personal contrasexual correspondences to fill in the rest. So the contrasexual is now going to be masculine. Well, yes, masculine. Anyway, we're going to just take these elements one by one and apply these rules. So love becomes beauty, matter becomes enchantment, and that gives us our tertiary archetype, which is neutralized as always, and that is a princess archetype, or feminine melancholic, and but it's neutralized because it's in the masculine part of the psyche. And then following these rules, the spirit becomes libido, action becomes truth. That gives us the libido truth combination, which is the earthly god or masculine phlegmatic. That's the quaternary archetype, which is masculine in a masculine space. Now remember, when we were sort of equating people with archetypes, we were identifying them with their primary archetypes. However, auxiliary archetypes can be quite prominent in one's personality, or not even necessarily prominent, but sort of come out sometimes. So let's take a look at some auxiliary archetypes. So in this example, we're going to look at the secondary archetype of a MIP psychological type. So that's masculine, introverted, phlegmatic. So we have here the example of Harry Styles, who is a masculine, introverted, phlegmatic, or introverted earthly god. His secondary archetype is princess, or the feminine melancholic. And you can see that obviously in his choice of clothes, he's very much tapping into the princess archetype, which is neutralized, but it's still coming out. Here we have another example, Jane Fonda, actress but also activist, and so she is of the Fek psychological type, so feminine, extroverted, choleric, or you could say extroverted heavenly woman. That's her primary archetype, but her primary archetype is in her unconscious, actually. So quite prominent in her psyche you would expect would be the secondary archetype, which is actually in the conscious. And this is a neutralized masculine archetype, which is the sanguine, masculine sanguine, or hero archetype. So you see how this hero archetype comes out in her personality. Now let's have a look at how the tertiary archetype can come out. So the tertiary archetype is neutralized, but it's of the same gender as the primary one. So in this case, we're looking at the example of Eminem, who in his youth was quite choleric, you could say, and now he's much more like his primary archetype, which is phlegmatic. So he's of the his psychological type is MEP, male, extroverted, phlegmatic. So which is so his primary archetype is truth plus libido. That is the masculine phlegmatic, which only is coming out now in his sort of later years. But when he was young, he was very much manifesting his tertiary archetype, which is the masculine cleric, which is the heavenly hero. Here we have an example of the quaternary archetype in action. So we have Prince here. He's a male, extroverted choleric. So his primary archetype is action plus spirit. That's male choleric, masculine choleric. His quaternary archetype is the feminine melancholic, which is the princess. So princess. Indeed, he manifests the princess archetype quite a bit. And here we have another example of the quaternary archetype in action. Here, sort of quite the opposite. So here we're dealing with a female introverted melancholic. So primary archetype is female melancholic, which is the princess. Quaternary archetype is masculine choleric, which is the heavenly hero. And here we see that in Sinead O'Connor, this masculine choleric archetype comes out. Now we're going to talk about the 4 families and 4 perspectives. The punchline is that we have 16 different psychological types, and they're organized into 4 families. And let's have a look and see what makes someone belong to the same family. Well, basically, you're in the same family if you contain the same archetypes, but you take a different perspective depending on which of the 4 corners you live in. So to be concrete, let's take an example of a MIM, male introverted melancholic, like Nikola Tesla here. So in his personal interior, which is his conscious, he has the God archetype or masculine melancholic archetype. Now we've flipped the interior and the exterior. So now the personal interior of the conscious, we've sort of made it such that it's down here in this corner, and we now have an extroverted melancholic, a male extroverted melancholic. Again, still primary archetype is still God, but it's just the conscious is extroverted. And here we have all of a sudden Nikola Tesla has transformed into Brad Pitt, for example. Now we've interchanged the roles of contrasexual and personal. Remember, all the archetypes are the same. We've just changed the labeling of the boxes here, right? So now the conscious is on the heavenly woman or feminine choleric, and in particular we have a female introverted choleric, such as, for example, Angelina Jolie. Now we've flipped the interior and exterior again. So now we have the fourth perspective, the perspective of the female extroverted choleric, or extroverted heavenly woman, such as Miley Cyrus, for example. And if you flip the personal and contrasexual one more time, you're back to where you started, square one, and Nikola Tesla. So to recap, four psychological types that differ only in perspective are said to belong to the same family. Every family has 2 males and 2 females, and there are 4 such families. So you've seen the first family, the Mim, Mem, Fig, Fek family. Then we have the second family, which is Fim, Fem, and Mick, Mek. So we're talking about female melancholic, so princess and heavenly hero, which is the masculine cleric. Then the third family consists of male sanguine, so hero, and female phlegmatic, which is earthly princess. So hero and earthly princess, they form, both introverted and extroverted, form the third family. And the fourth family consists of feminine sanguine, which is woman, and masculine, masculine phlegmatic, which is earthly god. So woman and earthly god, they're in the same family, and again, both introverted and extroverted versions thereof. So let's make that a bit more concrete. So this is the example we've already seen, but now all in one picture. So you see, it's as if, so basically if I put a picture in a corner, that means that for that particular psychological type, the conscious lives in that corner. So here we have our 4 Mim, Mem, Fek, and Fig, God, heavenly woman family. And the second family is the heavenly hero princess family. So basically, if you are Tom Cruise, inside your family there's also a John Lennon, a Yoko Ono, and a Nicole Kidman. And you see, I've kind of deliberately chosen, where I could, people that have kind of been romantically involved, like Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, or John Lennon and Yoko Ono, for that matter. So here we are. If you are an Emma Watson, you have a Donald Trump somewhere in your psyche, or a Sting, or a Melania Trump. So this is the earthly princess hero family. And finally we have the fourth family, which is the woman earthly god family. So here we have an extroverted and introverted woman, Cher and Barbra Streisand respectively, and we have an introverted and extroverted earthly gods, Dustin Hoffman and Sonny Bono, who used to be Cher's husband. So it's time to wind down with a bit of discussion and conclusion. So how do we go about determining someone's psychological type? Well, I would say that the first line of attack is to try to identify the primary archetype, and so you can do that by identifying the dominant elements. So, for instance, you have a female in front of you. So you're looking for a choice between love and beauty, say you say love, then you have a choice between matter and enchantment, you say matter, and then you have love plus matter, and that's the woman archetype, or the feminine sanguine. So that's one approach. Another is to go directly for the temperament, saying, okay, this is a female and she's sanguine, rather than some other temperament like choleric. And then you take it from there. Now, very often auxiliary archetypes interfere. So this is where it gets really tricky. So very often you get tricked by the auxiliary archetypes. So how do you figure out if that's the case? Well, if you have a female that better fits a masculine archetype, well, that means that you should probably be looking for the secondary or quaternary archetype there. And then sort of backtrack from there. So, for instance, a woman, an extroverted woman, meaning a sort of a female, extroverted sanguine, could look phlegmatic because of her quaternary earthly god, the masculine phlegmatic. Also, you should be aware that different cultures favor different temperaments. So, in cultures where it's sort of cool to be phlegmatic, someone who's sanguine could sort of tap into their phlegmatic archetype that everybody has. We all have all four temperaments. Just two of them are masculine and two of them are feminine. So then there's something you could call a bootstrap method, where you're sort of building a sort of a database of people you've already identified, and then you use those as a base. So at some point you sort of stop putting elements and say, okay, this person it reminds me completely of my friend Jack. Okay, and so and what does remind me mean? You really, unlike sort of a classical MBTI where you're just supposed to be looking at psychology and sort of tests and stuff, here you can really look at the sort of physiognomy, the energy, the look in the eye, how they move, even body type, habits, who their friends are, who their role models are. Often people choose role models that are of the exact same psychological type. So people feel a connection. Say, okay, this could be the best version of myself. So all this obviously gets easier with experience and as you build this database. Even looking at someone's family helps. Quite often, one or both parents are going to be in your psychological family. Or you're going to be attracted to someone who's in your psychological family. So that can also be quite interesting. But one thing is for sure, it's quite difficult to reduce all this to a standardized test. And let's just illustrate the previous slide with an example. So quite recently asked myself, okay, the four girls from Blackpink, the Korean band, what psychological types are they? And it turns out that they actually cover all four archetypes. So I was quite pleased with that. So we have a princess, Rosé. We have an earthly princess, Jenny. We have a woman, Jisoo. And we have a heavenly woman, Lisa. Now, how did I work this out? So let's take Rosé. So she's an introverted princess. Well, she reminded me of another introverted princess, which is Anna Kurnikova. Also, if you see from one of her videos, she has this kind of a bit sort of a chaste vibe about her, kind of like a clean vibe. you can see from this picture here, and very kind of quite sort of fragile and kind of girly, childish almost. So then another example is Jisoo. She is an extroverted woman. So she also had a sort of a video of her own, which was really, I found, quite sensual. The way she was moving around, very much like a woman would. Sort of slow. She also has a lot of phlegmatic in her, which comes from the male part of her family. And in fact, she reminds me a bit of the Dalai Lama, who is from the same family. He's an earthly god. Also, somehow the look, could remind of like a young Cher. So that's how I sort of worked that one out. Then we have Lisa. She's a heavenly woman. Well, you could say, so first of all, the look reminds a bit of Angelina Jolie. The energy, definitely. Then she said that she was influenced by Rihanna when she was young. Rihanna was her idol, and Rihanna is a heavenly woman, introverted. And she's sort of a great dancer. But again, depending on how you dance, she dances like a showgirl. So you're sort of doing it somehow in a very impressive way, very fast, and complicated choreographies and stuff. So that's the heavenly woman kind of way of dancing. And then here we have Jenny. She is phlegmatic. And she also has a bit of a sort of a twisted sense of humor. And I'm just watching some sort of another song of her. She had some quite sort of bizarre situations, as illustrated here, where she's been carried by a bowling ball. So yeah, anyway, I sort of worked out from all this. Yes, I've seen this before. And again, she reminds me of also other privately earthly princesses that I may know. So introverted. So yeah, that's basically how I personally work this out. It's not very transferable knowledge. You kind of have to maybe build up that experience. So just to conclude, so what have we've seen here? We've seen what I claim to be the correct model of psychological types, which has a special consideration for gender, both in terms of archetypes and in terms of the division of psyche in a masculine and feminine part. So we started off by looking at the 4 temperaments, and then created masculine and feminine versions of those, and that gives the 8 archetypes. Then we gave an intuitive characterization of the 8 elements, or what in Jungian psychology people would call psychological functions. Then we saw actually that these 2 approaches, the Jungian approach or the element approach and the temperament approach, are very much related, in that an archetype is composed of 2 elements. Then we looked at the psyche itself and how it's divided into 4 quadrants: interior and exterior, and personal and contrasexual. Or you could also call it conscious, unconscious, and then conscious anima / animus, unconscious anima / animus. So 4 quadrants. And then we saw how any given person has 4 archetypes distributed across those 4 quadrants. And finally, you can, out of the 16 different psychological types, you can group them into 4 families, and the 4 psychological types that belong to the same family are really just different perspectives on on the same structure. That's very interesting, and that's very important. So somehow, you always have to think that inside you somehow, your conscious has a certain perspective, but your unconscious has a perspective from a different psychological type, and so does your introverted and extroverted anima or animus. And this family concept is very important. If you really understand your family, especially if you study people who have psychological types that correspond to your family members, your psychological family members, then you really get to know what's going on, quote, inside you. It's not obviously inside, but it's somehow, it's part of your psyche. It's probably worth having a quick slide on the comparison to the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is, as I said before, didn't quite get it right. Main issue, well, there's a couple of issues, but one of them being that there's not sufficient distinction between masculine and feminine in the MBTI. There's too much emphasis on the distinction between perception and judgment, and they've sort of got the ordering of the cognitive functions wrong. But besides that, you can make a correspondence. Let's say if you're a male and you're an INFJ or an ISTP, then I would call that a MIM, male, introverted, melancholic. And if you're female, then you'd be a female, introverted, phlegmatic. So these are really, it's a very important distinction that is not made in MBTI. But for what it's worth, this is the correspondence. If MBTI managed to get your psychological type correctly, which not really not a given.